Hey guys, JHoyt here. Before we get into today's video, I want to say thank you guys for all the support on the channel recently. All of our numbers and subscribers, views, minutes watched, everything has been up. So thank you guys so much for that. But we got another great video for you today, hopping back to NHL. What's on, guys? JHoyt back with you today. Welcome back to NHL 21. We got some online verses for you in the background, so I hope you guys do enjoy that. So we have our final Stanley Cup back-to-back champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and congrats to them, right? They made a lot of games look really easy, and I almost thought it was going to be a quick and easy 4-0, but they wanted to win it in their own building, it seemed like. But here's the thing, right? They're celebrating right now, but in the next, month, I think, of time, a lot's going to change, right? We got the entry-level draft, we got the expansion, I think we got the expansion draft first, entry-level draft, of course, free agency, and obviously eventually we'll get to the preseason and back to training camps and all of that stuff. So what does Tampa Bay do, right? Because I think they're over the cap already, and they probably want to try to free up some of that. And obviously with the expansion draft here, they want to probably do something so that way they don't lose their players for nothing. So here's what I'm looking at, right? So I went on, what is this, cap friendly, not sponsored, but I use this site all the time when looking up salaries and everything for a lot of these NHL teams. And when you look at their roster and when you use the quick protect tool or the expansion draft simulator or whatever it's called on here, you can kind of see what kind of people, or a lot of people from the community, what players they protect from each team. And I just hit it once and just kind of see what they did. And I think they protected, almost all the players that I would have if I was, the GM of Tampa Bay. But in this case, let's talk about who we want to protect. So when you simulated the quick protect, right, we'll go down through the forwards. So you have Nikita Kucherov, who has a no-move contract. You have Steven Stamkos, who also has a no-move contract. You have Braden Point, obviously good young centerman, their #1 center, very good player, no questions about that one. Andre Palat, some people may not put him in here, but I definitely think he's definitely worth a protect. And since he plays on the first line with Point and with Kucherov, that he definitely deserves to be on here. You have Yanni Gourde, 29-year-old, got a few years left on his contract. I wouldn't have signed him to the contract that they did give him, but hey, that's a different story for a different day. Then they go down to Anthony Cirelli, right, one of their good young centermen, 23 years old, I forgot about. And then Alex Killorn. And with those 7 forwards, right, that's the 7 forwards that a lot of people would say. However, there's one switch I would make, and that would be Tyler Johnson added and then Alex Killorn taken off. And for the reason that we're going to get into a little bit later, but I would trade him. And like I said, we'll get into that later on. But they also have players like Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, Patrick Maroon, and a couple other players that, a lot of good young up-and-coming players, after that. But Maroon, you're not going to take over some of those guys. Coleman, maybe. Goodrow, probably not, but there's not much difference between a lot of these people's picks. Like I said, I would pick Tyler Johnson over Killorn just due to age, and it's only a year different, but I think that would help them out just a little bit more. On defense, it's all their left defensemen basically. Hedman, no move contract. You got McDonough and you have Sergachev, but you still have guys like Chernak, Ruda, David Savard, Cal Foote, and a bunch of other AHL guys after that. Luke Shen, I guess, is there too. But I'm guessing they're probably going to make a trade of some sort to stay away from guys like Cal Foote and Chernak. I don't think they really care about Ruda or David Savard, but we'll get into their defensemen later on here. And then, of course, in net, Vasilevsky. No questions asked about that one. Not much explanation needed either. So, if you're Tampa Bay, what do, right? You go into next year, you have a pretty good roster already. You still have 95% of your same team, but you got to do something, right? You got to get better with the cap. And the reason for this is you have a lot of guys, you know, signed to some big deals. So as you can see on your screen, this is all of their forwards. So if you look at the forwards, right next to where it says cap percentage, and it says 21-22, that is the year, and that's for next year. So do they have a contract for next year is that column. So everyone down that list, you have a couple guys that are expiring, you know, the following year, but not necessarily this upcoming year. So you have Jamel Smith, who's like a AHL rotating fourth line, in and out of the lineup guy for them. Then you have Barclay Goodrow, who's been a pretty solid force ever since coming over on that third/fourth line. Then you have Blake Coleman, who's been pretty good for them. I definitely see them re-signing Coleman and Goodrow. You have Ross Colton, who I've never really heard of, but I guess was playing with them down the stretch and into the playoffs. And then you have Alex Barré-Boulet, I believe it is. Another good young player that I believe made his debut, you know, this year or whatever it was, and you know, didn't really play too much for them. But what do they do, right? They have, I don't think, like any salary cap available going into next year, and I would almost guess that they don't have any as I'm looking down here. Yeah, cap hit, zero monies, right? No monies left. So going into next year, they're gonna have to decrease their salary somehow. Now, where do you do that? You're not touching Stamkos. You're not touching Kucherov. You're going to need a signed point next year, and he's probably going to want some big money, probably at least up to like $7, $8, $9 million, I would guess. You're not going to touch him, though. Then you have Palat, who's penny UFA after this next year, but I'm guessing they're going to try to re-sign him maybe for a little bit or around that same money at $5.3 million. Then you have a couple of my trade options, right? And I think there's kind of three that are going to be the big three in those talks. I guess maybe they'll just go with whoever can give them the best deal. But those three players are Yanni Gourde, right? He's got 4 years left at $5.16 whatever million, and one of the longest, you know, players on their team as far as contract goes, but doesn't really provide that much to the team, realistically. I mean, yes, he does a lot of dirty work. He's a checking guy. Doesn't really get on the board as far as points go, but paying $5 million to someone that does that, I don't know. Maybe he could fit in somewhere else, you know, and potentially, you know, fill a bigger role, and maybe his offense goes up from there. But Gourde would definitely be on my trade bait board just to try to see what we can get for him. He's only got 4 years left. He's still 29 years old, so not terribly old, and still some room to, you know, play, you know, obviously if he wants to. Then you have a guy like Tyler Johnson, who's still got 3 years left on his contract. And he's, yeah, obviously he's got a ways till that comes in. So I don't think they're gonna try to get rid of him. Maybe they will. I mean, that's still a pretty decent sized contract. He found himself on the fourth line for most of the Stanley Cup run, I believe. But who knows where that's gonna go? But then you also have the last guy in Alex Killorn, which I think is probably the most likely out of those three that will get traded. And the reason is he's only got 2 years left at $4.45 million. And just like Gourde, he's not really putting up much in the points department, right? He's kind of playing that third, fourth line, maybe up to that second line when he's healthy role. But even then, he's been pretty much a 30s, maybe 40s points getter his like entire career. So I don't feel like he's, you know, going to be in Tampa Bay much longer, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, or the year after that. Within 3 years, he will not be on this team anymore. Obviously, he's a big force in the dressing room, but just business is business at the end of the day, and money's definitely going to come and get in the way of that. Then you have Patrick Maroon down there is making next to nothing. He'll probably retire after that year anyway, or maybe within the next couple of years. Stevens, Joseph, two fourth line AHL, you know, prospects, whatever you want to call them. And then we already talked about the UFAs and RFAs down there. But then you look down to defensemen. What are they going to do there? Well, they got Hedman. Obviously, you're not going to do anything with him. McDonough, he's still got a ton of years on his contract. Yeah, Hedman's got 4 years. McDonough's got 5. Sergachev, you're not going to do anything with. He's still got 2 years. He's still super young. You just signed Chernak, I think, last year. He's still got 2 years, though. Jan Ruda's under contract next year. But here's the thing, though. You got 3 right-hand defensemen down there to fill that in that third line right defenseman spot. Well, you got David Savard, who didn't really do too much for him until the playoffs, where he, I think, had like 5 or 6 points or something like that. So unless you could sign him to like a $1.5 million or under $2 million contract, I don't feel like that'd be worth it, especially given your cap situation. You got Luke Shen, who I think has made under $1 million the last like 5 years. So he might be able to get a steal of a deal in there. Maybe, you know, have him as like your 7th defenseman, you know, in and out of the lineup type of guy. And then you have Cal Foote down there, one of their best, you know, young defensemen, 22 years old, definitely wanting to make the jump to the NHL. So I don't really see much you could do with their back end. You know, I don't think I would re-sign David Savard personally, but, you know, again, that's just me. Then you go down to their back end as far as their goaltenders. Vasilevsky's there. Obviously, you're not going to touch him, right? He's probably one of your best players. Not probably, definitely one of your best players. And then you have Christopher Gibson and Curtis McElhinney as your backup goaltenders. You're probably going to re-sign one of them. The other one's probably going to walk to go somewhere else. And then they don't have anyone long-term. IR, that's, you know, really a notable name. And then you have nothing as far as dead cap goes. So what do you do, right? Like I said, what I would do is protect Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, Palat, Gord, Johnson, and Cirelli. Not necessarily in that order, but those 7 forwards. McDonough, Hedman, and Sergachev as your defensemen. Vasilevsky and net. And then I would try to trade definitely Killorn and maybe Gord. Whichever one of those guys you don't trade will probably go into your second line left wing spot. But definitely something has to happen because you need to figure out your cap situation. Realistically, you could let all of your pending UFAs go and I think still be okay next year, realistically. But you definitely should probably sign, you know, Goudreau, Coleman as a definite, and then maybe Shen if you can get him for cheap like you have been, and then definitely sign Foote. And then other than that, you wouldn't really be missing much. I mean, a couple of young guys maybe you want to get back in and sign them for cheap. But, you know, looking at next year's lines, projected lines here, you have Palat, Point, and Kucherov. That's been their top line for a couple of years now, I think. And then you have either Gord or Killorn, whichever one you don't trade, but probably Gord there, you know, if it fits in that role. Then you have Cirelli and Stamkos on that second line, who Cirelli and Stamkos have been a pretty good pair there as well. Third line, you got Coleman, Johnson, and Joseph. Pretty solid. I mean, especially if you re-sign Coleman, and I think Joseph's on a contract for another year, but that way it moves Johnson back up to a third line role. You know, hopefully get him some more time on ice, and overall will probably help everything else out. And then on that fourth line, you got Maroon, Goudreau, and Stevens. Again, a couple of young guys, you know, moving up and making some big names here in the lineup. Maroon, I mean, how much longer he's going to play? Once he's gone, then you'll open up another spot for some other young guy. But for now, he's still there. He's still under contract, and who knows how long he's going to play for. But he does have a modified no-trade clause, which is really interesting. Starting next year, apparently he gets a 16-team trade list. So for some reason, they gave a fourth liner a no-trade clause. I don't really know why. But anyway, back to the back end, though. You got Hedman and Ruda, McDonough and Chernak, and then Sergachev and Foote. Obviously, you could put Foote or Chernak or Ruda with any of those defensemen, whoever they play best with, whoever they have the most chemistry with. And, you know, obviously you could flip around those left defensemen as well, you know, obviously depending on whatever you need. But obviously then Vasilevsky in net. And then you have your team. So you got to make at least one trade to clear up some salary, right? You got to get one of those guys that are making $4 or so million, whether it's Killorn, whether it's Gord, whether it's Johnson. And then also you got to think, who are they going to take in the expansion draft, right? Maybe they get rid of 2 players at the same time. Maybe they try to trade, or maybe they try to keep away, you know, through a trade, you know, with Seattle that they stay away from. Killorn, stay away from Gord, you know, depending on who they want to take. I don't really know, but they got a lot of good young players that are wanting spots, and a lot of these older guys and guys that are kind of falling off a little bit and not really playing a huge role on their team are going to want to, you know, push past those guys and eventually get into the lineup. But I think that's going to be it for today's video. Like, we had our full list of our 11 players that we're protecting. We got a couple of guys that we may end up trading. So what do you think, Tampa Bay fans? Who would you trade? Who would you protect? What do you think is going to happen next year? Who would you re-sign, not re-sign? Let me know all that fun information down in the comment section below. But that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy, hit that like button down below if you haven't yet. Or if you're brand new here, make sure to subscribe, turn those post notifications on, and don't forget, you can always change your mind later. But as always, guys, we'll see you in the next one.